Once upon a time, there was a small fishing village called Esukon. The village sat by the edge of the sea, where the waves rolled in gently and the smell of salt filled the air. The people of Esukon were simple and hard-working. They rose with the sun, fished during the day, and told stories by the fire at night. One day, a young woman named Abina arrived in the village. Nobody knew where she came from, but she told the chief she had come from a faraway place, seeking peace and a new life. The chief allowed her to stay, and soon Abina became a part of the village. Abina was different. Her beauty was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Her skin was smooth and glowed like polished wood in the sunlight. Her long dark hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes were as deep and mysterious as the ocean itself. She moved with grace, and when she spoke, her soft voice seemed to carry the calm of the sea. It wasn't long before the men of the village began to notice her. Many tried to win her heart, bringing her gifts of fish, fruits, and trinkets they found by the shore. But Abina always smiled politely and said, "Thank you," without giving anyone a chance to get closer. "She is so kind," said one of the fishermen to his friends. "But she is like the wind, you can't catch her." The women of the village also admired Abina. She was always willing to help, whether it was carrying water, cleaning fish, or keeping the children company, but even they found her mysterious. "Where do you come from, Abina?" Auntie Aqua asked one day as they cleaned fish together. "Far away," Abina replied with a small smile. She didn't say more, and Auntie Aqua didn't push her. When Abina wasn't helping in the village, she spent her time by the sea. She loved to walk along the shore, feeling the cool sand beneath her feet. Sometimes she would sit on the rocks, gazing out at the endless water as if she were waiting for something or someone. At night, in her little hut near the river, Abina would sit by the window and listen to the waves. She felt at peace in Esukon, but deep down, she knew her past was not as far behind as she wished it to be. As the days went by, Abina's presence in Esukon grew familiar, yet remained intriguing. The villagers admired her beauty and her gentle nature, but her peculiar habits made her the subject of whispered conversations. She sold intricate seashell jewelry at the bustling market, each piece so delicate and unique that buyers flocked to her stall. "Where does she find these shells?" asked one customer, holding up a necklace that glimmered in the sunlight. "Maybe the sea brings them to her," joked another, though there was a hint of seriousness in their voice. Abina's serene beauty and quiet charm made her jewelry even more sought after. But the more the villagers saw her, the more questions they had. She never joined in their celebrations, especially the town's famous annual ocean festival. While others danced, swam, and sang by the shore, Abina always stayed far from the water, retreating to her secluded home before sundown. "She doesn't even dip her feet in the water," said Auntie Aqua one evening, shaking her head. "And she lives so close to the sea. Isn't that strange?" "And she never has visitors," added another woman. "No friends, no family. What kind of young woman lives like that?" Despite the growing curiosity, Abina seemed unfazed by the villagers' questions. She continued to smile kindly at customers and greet people politely in the market, but she never let anyone get too close. One evening, as she arranged her jewelry stall, Kofi, a handsome fisherman, stopped by. He had been watching her from a distance for weeks, charmed not just by her beauty but by her calm, mysterious presence. "Good evening, Abina," he said, his voice warm. "Good evening, Kofi," she replied with her usual soft smile. "You sell jewelry that looks like it's made by the sea itself," Kofi said, picking up a bracelet adorned with tiny, perfectly shaped shells. "How do you make them look so beautiful?" Abina looked at him, her smile deepening. "I only take what the sea offers," she said. "The shells and stones have their own beauty. I just bring them together." Kofi nodded, impressed. "It's like magic." Abina's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "No, it's just patience." As the market began to wind down, Kofi lingered by her stall. He had noticed her peculiar habits, how she always left the market just as the sun touched the horizon, how she never joined the villagers at the ocean festival, how she seemed to avoid forming any close relationships. But despite his curiosity, he didn't ask her about these things. Instead, he said, You know, the Ocean Festival is coming up next week. It's the biggest celebration in Ezukon. You should come. It's a lot of fun. Abina shook her head gently. I don't think so. Festivals aren't really my thing. Why not? Kofi asked. You live so close to the sea, yet it's like you're trying to stay away from it. Abina looked at him for a long moment, her eyes calm but unreadable. Sometimes it's better to admire something from a distance, she said quietly. Kofi didn't push her, but his curiosity grew. Who was Abina really? And why did she choose to live alone in a secluded house near the sea, surrounded by secrets she refused to share? The peaceful days in Ezukon began to shift as strange events started to ripple through the village. At first, there were small things. Fishermen returning with empty nets from areas once teeming with fish, or sudden gusts of wind that knocked over stalls in the market. The villagers dismissed these as bad luck, but the signs grew harder to ignore. One evening, as the men prepared their boats for a night of fishing, the sea turned unnaturally calm. The waves stopped rolling, and the air grew thick and heavy. This is not normal, muttered one fisherman, gripping the side of his boat. The strange occurrences began to make people uneasy, and whispers filled the air. Some started to connect these events to Abina, the beautiful outsider who had come to the village just months before. And have you noticed, whenever something strange happens, she's always nearby? Others dismissed these thoughts as foolish gossip. Abina is kind, argued another woman, but doubts lingered. Abina sat by her window that night, staring out at the vast dark ocean. Memories of her past tugged at her heart, filling her with both longing and pain. She had once belonged to the sea, a mermaid in a kingdom deep below the waves. Her family was powerful, ruling over the oceans with their ability to shift between forms. But despite her life of luxury, Abina had always felt restless. The sea wasn't enough for her. She had watched the human world from afar, fascinated by the freedom they seemed to enjoy. While her siblings were content in their watery palace, she dreamed of walking on land, feeling the sun on her face and the sand beneath her feet. Her decision to leave hadn't been easy. Her family had warned her of the dangers of the human world, of the curse that could strip her of her freedom if she chose to stay on land too long. But Abina had refused to listen. She had given up her tail for legs, casting off her life in the depths to seek something more. Now, sitting in her small house by the shore, she wondered if she had made the right choice. She knew this strange occurrence in the village was a warning to her from her family. Their way of telling her to go back home. She loved the life she had built in Ezukon, but the fear of being discovered weighed heavily on her. Was it worth it? She whispered to herself, her voice trembling. Abina's dreams of freedom clashed with the reality she faced. She had traded the safety of her home for a life of uncertainty. Kofi, the young fisherman who had grown close to Abina, continued to notice her peculiar habits. He couldn't deny his feelings for her. There was something about her quiet strength and mysterious aura that drew him in, but he couldn't ignore the questions piling up in his mind. One night, Kofi decided to visit Abina's house. He wanted to reassure her, to let her know he was on her side. When he arrived, he found her sitting by the window, lost in thought. "Abina," he said softly, stepping inside. She turned to him, startled, her eyes wide. For a moment, she looked vulnerable, as if she had been caught in a moment she didn't want to share. "Is everything all right?" Kofi asked. Abina nodded, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. Kofi sat down beside her, his expression gentle but curious. "The villagers are talking," he said carefully. "They think you're connected to what's happening. I don't believe them, but I need to understand. Abina, is there something you're not telling me?" Abina looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes filled with sorrow. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but then closed it again, struggling with the weight of her secret. "Kofi," she said finally, "there are things about me that I can't explain. Not yet." "Why not?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Because if I do, you might see me differently, she said. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Kofi reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. I won't turn away, Abina. Whatever it is, I'll stand by you. But Abina couldn't respond. The fear in her heart was too strong. The silence between them grew. Though Kofi meant every word, he couldn't shake the feeling that Abina was keeping something important from him. When he left her house that night, his heart was heavy with doubt. In the days that followed, Kofi decided to keep his distance. Though he loved Abina, the rumors in the village and her refusal to trust him made him question their bond. He convinced himself it was better to give her space, even if it pained him to do so. Abina noticed his absence. As she walked through the market or sat by the shore, she wondered if Kofi had given up on her. The thought made her chest ache, but she knew she couldn't blame him. She had chosen this life of freedom, and it came with sacrifices. The strange events in Esukon showed no signs of stopping. The villagers continued to whisper about the unusual happenings. The dead fish on the shore, the calm sea when it should have been restless, and the growing sense of unease in the air. Some believed the sea itself was angry, while others pointed their suspicions at Abina. Abina, meanwhile, faced her own inner turmoil. She thought about the family she had left behind. Her magical family had always controlled her life, dictating where she could go, what she could do, and most importantly, who she could love. They had warned her against forming connections with humans, calling it dangerous and foolish, and when she left the sea behind, she believed she was leaving her old life for good. Yet, in the quiet of her home, the voice of her family haunted her. It echoed in her mind, pulling her back to a world she no longer wanted to be a part of. Come back, they seemed to say. The human world will never accept you. One night, as the moon shone brightly over the waves, Abina stood at the water's edge. The tide lapped at her feet, cold and inviting. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, speaking aloud as if her family could hear her. I won't go back, she said firmly. This is my life now. I choose to stay here. At that moment, the sea seemed to stir. A strong wave crashed against the shore, soaking the hem of her dress. In her heart, she knew her family was trying to send her a message, warning her that she was making a mistake. But Abina refused to listen. She thought of Esukon, the people she had grown to care for, the simple joy of selling her jewelry at the market, and even the warmth of Kofi's smile, though he had been keeping his distance lately. She had chosen this life, and she wasn't going to give it up. If love with humans brings pain, she whispered, then I will face it. Love is worth the risk. Not long after, a wealthy trader named Kojo arrived in Esukon. His caravan brought spices, fabrics, and other goods from distant lands, and his presence caused a stir in the village. Kojo was tall, confident, and quick to charm everyone he met. When he first saw Abina at the market, arranging her seashell jewelry on a wooden table, he was struck by her beauty. Who is she? Kojo asked one of the villagers. Her name is Abina, the villager replied. She's new here. Kojo wasted no time introducing himself. He approached Abina with a broad smile, carrying a basket of fine silk scarves. Good morning, Abina, he said. I've heard much about you. Abina looked up, surprised by the stranger's boldness. Good morning, she replied politely. These scarves would suit you, Kojo said, holding up a deep blue one that reminded Abina of the ocean. A gift for the most beautiful woman in Esukon. Abina smiled faintly but shook her head. Thank you, but I can't accept it. Kojo chuckled. You're humble too. I like that. Over the next few days, Kojo continued to visit her at the market, showering her with compliments and gifts. He made his intentions clear, even going so far as to propose marriage after only a week. Abina, he said one evening, standing before her stall as the market quieted down. You are a rare jewel, and I want to make you my wife. I can give you everything you've ever dreamed of. Though flattered by his words, Abina knew her answer. She shook her head gently, her voice firm but kind. "Thank you, Kojo. But I can't marry you. I'm not the woman you think I am." Kojo's face fell, his pride clearly wounded. "Why not? Is it because I'm not from this village? I can prove my worth to you." "It's not about that," Abina said. "I just can't." Her refusal sent ripples through the village. People began to talk, their whispers louder than ever. "Why would she turn down a man like Kojo?" they asked. "He's rich and handsome. What more could she want?" Some began to suspect there was more to Abina's story than she let on. The jealousy and suspicion grew, adding fuel to the rumors that had already started to spread. Kojo, humiliated by her rejection, joined in the gossip. "She's hiding something," he told the villagers. "No woman turns down a man like me without a reason." When Kofi heard about Kojo's bold proposal to Abina, his chest tightened with jealousy. For weeks he had kept his distance, unsure of how to handle his growing feelings for her and the strange rumors swirling around her. But the thought of losing Abina to someone like Kojo, a man who seemed to have everything, was too much to bear. One evening, Kofi found himself walking towards Abina's house, his heart pounding. The sun was setting. He didn't know what he would say, but he knew he had to act before it was too late. When Abina opened the door and saw Kofi standing there, she was surprised. They hadn't spoken much since his visits had grown less frequent. "Kofi," she said softly, stepping aside to let him in. "What brings you here?" Kofi hesitated for a moment, then blurted out, "I heard about Kojo's proposal." Abina's expression didn't change, but Kofi could see a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe sadness, maybe guilt. "I turned him down," she said quietly. "I know," Kofi replied, stepping closer. "But it made me realize something. Abina, I can't stay away from you anymore. I don't care about the rumors or what anyone else says. I love you." Abina's heart skipped a beat. She had missed Kofi's warmth, his quiet strength, and the way he made her feel safe. But his words also filled her with fear. She loved him too, but her secret weighed heavily on her soul. "I don't know if this is a good idea," she said, her voice trembling. "You do not care about the whispers in the village, the things they say about me. There are things about me." Kofi shook his head. "I don't care, Abina. Everybody has a secret or something personal they want to keep to themselves. Please, marry me." Abina looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. Despite her fears, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe their love really was strong enough to survive the truth. After a long pause, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the village. Some people were happy for them, but others were skeptical. The rumors about Abina grew louder, fueled by jealousy and suspicion. Kojo, still smarting from Abina's rejection, was the loudest voice among the doubters. He began telling anyone who would listen that Abina was cursed, that she had brought misfortune to the village ever since her arrival. "She turned me down because she's hiding something," Kojo said. "Mark my words, nothing good will come of this wedding." The gossip spread like wildfire, and soon even Kofi couldn't ignore the hostility growing around them. Desperate to protect Abina and find some peace, he decided to visit the village oracle. The oracle's hut stood at the edge of the forest, shrouded in mystery. Smoke curled from a small fire outside, and the scent of herbs filled the air. Kofi entered, his heart heavy with worry. The oracle, an old woman with sharp eyes, looked up as he approached. "What troubles you, Kofi?" she asked, her voice raspy but calm. "It's about Abina," Kofi said. "The villagers are turning against her. They say she's cursed, but I know she's not. I love her, and I want to marry her, but something feels wrong." The oracle stared at him for a long moment before speaking. "You seek answers about her, but the truth is not mine to give. What I can tell you is this: a love built on lies will drown under the weight of truth." Kofi frowned. "What does that mean?" The oracle didn't answer. Instead, she turned her gaze to the fire, the flames dancing in her eyes. "You must decide for yourself what is more important. love, or the truth. As Kofi left the oracle's hut, her words echoed in his mind. He loved Abina deeply, but the doubts he had buried began to resurface. Back in the village, preparations for the wedding continued, but the atmosphere was tense. The rumors, the jealousy, and the warnings all seemed to point to a storm on the horizon, one that neither Kofi nor Abina could avoid. The wedding between Abina and Kofi was the grandest event Esukon had seen in years. The entire village gathered to celebrate, dressed in their finest clothes. Women sang traditional songs, their voices rising joyfully over the sound of the ocean waves, and men danced with spirited energy. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly prepared fish and spices, and the laughter of children running about added to the festive atmosphere. Abina looked radiant in her white wrapper adorned with shells and beads, her beauty mesmerizing everyone who saw her. Kofi stood proudly by her side, his love for her written plainly on his face. For a moment it seemed as though the tension and rumors that had plagued their engagement were forgotten. "May your union bring peace and blessings," said the village chief as he concluded the ceremony. The villagers cheered, showering the couple with petals and well wishes. Abina smiled, but a flicker of unease crossed her face as her gaze drifted toward the sea. The waves seemed to call to her, their whispers growing louder as the sun set. She shook off the feeling, determined to enjoy her special day. As the festivities died down and the villagers returned to their homes, Kofi and Abina walked hand in hand along the shore, the moonlight casting a silver glow over the water. The night was quiet, save for the gentle lapping of the waves. But something about Abina felt different. Kofi noticed her grip tightening on his hand, her steps slower, her eyes fixed on the horizon as if drawn by an unseen force. "Abina," Kofi said softly. "Are you all right?" She paused, her breath shallow. "I just need a moment," she murmured, pulling her hand away. "You go ahead. I'll join you soon." Kofi frowned but nodded, deciding to give her space. He returned to their hut, but as minutes passed and Abina didn't follow, his worry grew. Quietly he stepped back outside and walked toward the beach, his footsteps muffled by the sand. What he saw froze him in place. Abina stood ankle-deep in the water, the moonlight shimmering around her. Her arms were raised, and her voice, soft and melodic, seemed to blend with the sound of the waves. Then, before his eyes, her legs began to shimmer and fade. Scales replaced her smooth skin, and her lower body transformed into a long, glistening tail. Her hair flowed like seaweed in the breeze, and her eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. Kofi's breath caught in his throat. He stumbled backward, the sound of his movement breaking the spell. Abina turned, her eyes widening in shock as she saw him. "Kofi, wait!" she began, but he was already running, his mind reeling from what he had just witnessed. By morning, the entire village knew what had happened. News of Abina's transformation spread like wildfire. Some villagers were terrified, convinced that she was cursed and would bring disaster to Esukon. "She's a creature of the sea," one man said, crossing himself. "The sea gods will punish us for harboring her." "She must leave," another woman said firmly. "Her kind don't belong among humans." But others were more cautious. "What if the gods are watching?" an elder whispered. "Banishing her might anger them." Kofi, however, was neither afraid nor cautious. He was furious. That morning he stormed into Abina's hut, his face hard with anger. "You lied to me," he said, his voice trembling with both hurt and rage. "You let me love you, knowing it was all a lie." Abina stood silently, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I never meant to hurt you, Kofi," she said. "I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. I love you, and I didn't want to lose you." "You love me?" Kofi scoffed. "Then why didn't you trust me? Do you have any idea what you've done? The whole village is turning against us because of you." Tears filled Abina's eyes, but she didn't look away. "I never asked to be born this way," she said. "I chose to leave my world because I wanted to be free, to live like you. But I can't change what I am." Kofi stared at her, his heart torn between love and betrayal. Finally, he turned away. "I need time," he said coldly. I don't know if I can forgive this." As he walked out of the hut, Abina sank to the floor, her tears falling silently. She had always known this day might come, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. Days after Kofi's discovery of Abina's secret, the tension between them grew unbearable. Abina stayed mostly in her hut, her heart heavy with the fear of rejection, while Kofi wrestled with his emotions. The villagers, sensing the growing turmoil, kept their distance but continued to gossip. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, Abina invited Kofi to her hut. He entered hesitantly, his face a mix of anger and confusion. Abina gestured for him to sit, and after a long moment she spoke. "Kofi," she began, her voice trembling, "I owe you the truth about who I am and where I come from." She told him everything, about her family deep in the ocean, their power as shapeshifters, and their warnings about the dangers of the human world. She spoke of her decision to leave, her longing for freedom, and the life she had built in Esukon. "I chose you," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I chose this life because I believed it was worth the risk. But I understand if you can't accept me." Kofi listened, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the edge of his chair. He wanted to tell her he understood, that he still loved her, but every time he thought of her tail shimmering in the moonlight, he felt a pang of fear. "I don't know, Abina," he said finally. "I don't know if I can look at you the same way." As the words left his mouth, Abina's heart broke. She turned away, her shoulders trembling, but before she could respond, her body began to shimmer faintly, her legs flickering as though they might disappear. She clutched the table, panic flashing across her face. "What's happening?" Kofi asked, alarmed. "I'm losing control," Abina whispered. "The sea is calling me back. If I don't stay near the water, I might not be able to transform again." Kofi stared at her, torn between his love for the woman he had known and his fear of the creature she truly was. The villagers, unsettled by the rumors and the strange events that had followed Abina's arrival, decided to summon the oracle to learn the truth. They gathered at the edge of the forest, where the oracle lived, her presence always shrouded in mystery. The oracle listened as the villagers explained their fears. "Is it safe to have a mermaid living among us?" they asked. "Why has she brought these curses upon us?" The oracle, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, nodded slowly. "Abina is not of this realm," she said. "She belongs to the sea, a creature bound by its laws and its magic, but she is not the only one with ulterior motives." The villagers gasped, confused. "What do you mean?" one of them asked. The oracle's gaze fell on Kofi, who had reluctantly joined the gathering. "Kofi," she said, her voice sharp, "tell them why you truly sought Abina's hand." Kofi froze, his face draining of color. "I don't know what you mean," he stammered. "You do," the oracle said firmly. "Speak the truth, or I will reveal it for you." Kofi looked around, his heart pounding. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't marry her just because I loved her," he admitted. "I've seen her with precious stones, jewels I've never seen before. I thought, if I married her, those riches would be mine. I thought she came from well." The villagers gasped in shock, their eyes darting between Kofi and Abina. Abina, who had been silent, turned to Kofi with tears streaming down her face. "You used me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You didn't love me for who I am?" Kofi's face crumpled with shame. "I didn't know, Abina," he said desperately. "I didn't know you were... You thought I was human," she finished, her voice shaking. The oracle raised her hands, silencing the crowd. "Kofi, the stones you saw were not riches she carried. They are gifts from the sea itself. They belong to her because she is of the ocean. And now, because of your selfishness and her hidden truth, you are bound to each other." "What does that mean?" Kofi asked, panic rising in his voice. The oracle's eyes burned brighter. "You will either learn to trust each other and accept your fates, or you will face eternal separation. The choice is yours, but know this: neither of you can escape what lies ahead. Also," the oracle continued, "you will need to return to the sea if you want to control your transformations." As the oracle's words echoed through the air, Abina felt a strange sensation in her chest, as though a thread had tied her heart to Kofi's. Kofi too felt it, a connection he couldn't explain, binding him to the woman he had wronged. The villagers stepped back, murmuring among themselves. Some felt pity, while others feared what this bond might mean for Esukon. But one thing was certain: Kofi and Abina's lives would never be the same again. The morning after the oracle's pronouncement, Kofi and Abina stood at the edge of the village, their belongings packed into a small bundle. The villagers had turned their backs on them, fearful of Abina's true nature and resentful of the chaos her presence had caused. Even those who once admired her beauty now whispered curses under their breath. "I'm sorry," Kofi said quietly, as they began their journey down the winding path toward the sea. "For what?" Abina replied, her voice distant. "For everything," he said, his head bowed. "For letting greed cloud my heart. For not being strong enough to stand by you when you needed me." Abina didn't respond immediately. Her steps were slow, her thoughts heavy. She had loved Esukon, the simple life she had tried to build, and the hope that she could escape her past. But now, that life was gone. "We have no choice now," she said finally, her voice steady but sad. "I need to return to the sea. It's the only way I can regain control of my transformation." Kofi looked at her, guilt etched across his face. He had betrayed her trust, yet here she was, allowing him to walk beside her. "I'll go with you," he said firmly. Abina paused and turned to him. "This won't be easy," she warned. "My family won't welcome you. They'll test you, and if they find you unworthy, they'll take me back and banish you forever. I'll prove to them that my love for you is real. It's no longer about riches or what I thought you could give me. I love you, Abina, for who you are." Her gaze softened, and for the first time in days, a small smile touched her lips. "Then let's go." The journey to Abina's underwater kingdom began at dusk. As the sky turned shades of purple and orange, they stood at the water's edge. Abina stepped forward, her feet sinking into the wet sand. She turned to Kofi, who looked uneasy. "Take my hand," she said. Kofi hesitated but reached out. The moment their hands touched, Abina's magic surrounded them, helping him to breathe underwater, and the ocean rose to meet them. A shimmering bubble of water formed around them, and with a rush of energy, they were pulled beneath the waves. The underwater world was breathtaking. Coral reefs in vivid colors stretched as far as the eye could see. But the beauty didn't calm Kofi's nerves. He clung to Abina's hand, his lungs filled with air only because of her magic. As they approached her family's palace, a towering structure of coral and shells, two figures emerged. Abina's mother and elder brother stood at the gates, their expressions stern. "You've returned," her mother said, her voice cold. Her eyes flicked to Kofi. "And you've brought a human." "Mother," Abina said, stepping forward, "I need your help. My transformations are out of control. If I don't regain my balance, I'll lose myself." Her mother's gaze softened slightly, but her brother sneered. "And why is he here? Has he come to take more from you?" "No," Kofi said, stepping forward. His voice trembled but held conviction. "I came because I love her. I was wrong before, but I'm here to prove that I've changed." The brother scoffed. "Prove it? Words mean nothing here." Abina's family agreed to let Kofi stay, but only if he passed their tests. Over the next few days, Kofi faced trials designed to challenge his strength, loyalty, and humility. He was tasked with finding a rare shell buried deep in a cave, swimming through dangerous currents with only a fraction of Abina's magic to protect him. He faced Abina's brother in a duel of wits, where the wrong answer could mean exile, or worse. Each trial tested Kofi's resolve, but he never wavered. Though his body ached and his mind was weary, his love for Abina kept him going. On the final day, Abina's family summoned them both to the great hall of the palace. Her mother sat on a throne of coral, her expression unreadable. "Kofi," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "you have proven that your love for my daughter is no longer selfish. You risked your life for her, knowing you might not survive. For that I grant my blessing." Abina's eyes widened with hope, but her mother held up a hand. However, there are conditions. Abina is still a creature of the sea. She cannot abandon her roots completely. If she is to remain human, she must live by the ocean, where the water can keep her spirit balanced. Kofi nodded without hesitation. "We'll live by the sea," he said. "I'll protect her secret and honor her roots." Abina's mother studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then so be it." As they left the palace, Abina turned to Kofi, tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes, I did," he replied, taking her hand. "I love you, Abina. Not for your beauty or anything you have. Just you." Abina smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. For the first time, she felt truly free, not from the sea or her family, but from the fear of being unloved for who she truly was. Together, they returned to the surface, ready to build a new life by the ocean, where the waves would forever remind them of the trials they had faced and the love that had endured. Abina and Kofi found peace on a quiet stretch of shoreline, far from the troubles of Esukon. Their home was small but cozy, made with care, and surrounded by the beauty of the sea. The waves became their constant companion, a reminder of the trials they had faced and the love that had grown between them. They lived simply. Abina spent her mornings gathering shells and crafting beautiful jewelry, while Kofi fished, bringing home fresh catches from the ocean. They built a life together, blending their two worlds, the sea that had shaped Abina and the land that had grounded Kofi. In Esukon, the story of Abina and Kofi slowly faded over time. The villagers stopped speaking of curses and strange happenings. Still, on quiet nights, when the moon lit the waves, some whispered about a mermaid who had once walked among them. She was as beautiful as the sea itself, they said, but her secrets were too heavy for this village to bear. No one knew where Abina and Kofi had gone, but their story became a legend, softened by time. One evening, Abina sat alone on the shore watching the waves. As she stared at the water, her thoughts wandered. She thought about the journey she had taken, the courage it took to leave her home in the ocean, the pain of hiding her true self, and the strength it took to love and be loved in return. She smiled softly to herself. The path had not been easy, but it had been worth it. She had learned to be honest, even when it was hard, and to trust in love, even when it was uncertain. Kofi joined her, sitting quietly by her side. He didn't say anything, but his presence was enough. Together they watched the waves, their hearts full of peace. As the stars began to fill the sky, Abina felt content. She had found her place, not entirely of the sea, not entirely of the land, but somewhere in between. And that was enough. The waves rolled on, whispering secrets only the ocean could know, and Abina listened with a calm heart, ready for whatever the tide might bring.